Hello my friends, it's Friday. Welcome back. In today's video we go through the Russian economy and there's a lot of news about it. I could call it the collapse on the Moscow highway because that's what's the biggest thing happening there. Hundreds if not thousands of cars in line on a highway, no gas stations in line, out of fuel. How are you gonna fix that? Of course we'll end with the front lines as we do in every video. Let's just go into it. This first news, it's the only news that tells us a story of some system that still has fuel in Russia, and that's the Russian aviation. They are the last ones who have fuel because they are the top priority. The speaker of the Ukrainian Navy, captain of the second rank, Dmytro was asked whether the strikes on Russian oil refineries, which produce, among other things, fuel for the occupying army, affect the situation on the peninsula. According to him, there are 5 airfields in Crimea from which flights take off around the clock. Based on this, it can be concluded that the Russian army has enough aviation fuel. The point here being that Russian aviation is a priority, they hit Ukrainian targets, they get the fuel, but then, civilians and army doesn't. Somebody has to sacrifice. For example, the independent gas stations in Siberia, for example. Some 21 of the country's 38 large refineries where crude oil is converted into usable fuel like petrol and diesel have been hit since January. And here's where it gets interesting. These are the symptoms. Owners of small and independent petrol stations in Siberia have told Russian media that they had to shut down due to ongoing issues with fuel supply. A manager in Novosibirsk region compared the situation to the hyperinflation experienced by post-Soviet Russia. And I quote, "In my opinion, we haven't had a crisis like this since 1993 and 94. If you know, you know, but the 90s was the darkest hole for the Russian population. Not the Soviet times, not the stagnation of the 70s and 80s. It was the 90s, post-Soviet. Inflation was infinite. No food, no petrol, no money, no nothing. The new freedom was not free at all." So if people right now in Russia saying that this is 1993 and 94, this tells us how bad the situation is there. Now we get to the Moscow highway. I think you'll be waiting for that a little bit. There are big, massive highways in Russia because Russia is big and they need these massive highways. But since it is so vast, it is not dotted with gas stations like America, for example. You drive around in America, mostly you get a gas station after every some 20-30 miles. Of course, there are some areas, don't go crazy on me, where there's nothing on hundreds of miles. But in Russia, that's the situation. And imagine these thousands of cars driving in this highway, thinking, okay, I'm close to running out of fuel. There's gonna be a gas station soon. But that one has hundreds of cars in line. So, okay, I'm gonna get to the next one. It's 100 kilometers away. You get to the next one. There's again hundreds of cars in line there. So you're out of gas. You cannot drive anymore. You are forced to join that waiting line to the gas station. So are thousands of others. There's no fuel. There's no fuel coming. Everybody is running out of gas at the same time. They're hundreds of miles from the bigger towns. Maybe there are some smaller towns around this. And there are thousands of cars like that on every gas station. And there are not that many gas stations since it is Russia, not the United States. How do you think this will end? And I gotta stress, this is warm. This is 10, 15, up to 20 degrees still in some areas in Russia, Celsius. Now fast forwards 2 months, let's say January. It's gonna be -10, -15, and the same situation where cars will take more gasoline to keep them warm, keep them running, keep the AC warming up the car. The situation will only get worse. So this is a massive symptom here. Thousands of cars, they will be stranded because there's no gas coming. If it runs out of gas in that line, even if the line empties out, how are you gonna get the car to the gas station? You gotta push it. Now some areas, for example, Khabarovsk region of Russia, they are making these limits on how many liters of gasoline people can buy in how many days. It's so weird. Liters per day. It's a new unit of measurements for selling gasoline. Citizens will now be limited to purchasing only 10 liters, that's 2.64 US gallons of gasoline every 3 days. So 10 liters every 3 days. 10 liters of gasoline, 2.6 gallons or 10 liters, that will go through in 1 hour or less depending on which car you have and where you drive, in a city or in a highway. So it's 1 or 2 hours, but you get that every 3 days. This may be bad, but just wait until next week. Yes, I'm saying that. No, wait until 2 months. Wait until New Year. С Новым годом, друзья. It's Happy New Year's, my friends, because you will not have any gasoline because it's gonna be cold. You want to run your car to get warm inside. It's minus 15 outside and you can see the needle going down. And you cannot move your car after that. You're stranded there. I hate to say this, but there's gonna be civilian casualties of frostbite and even freezing to death. Here you can see another example of this. 1,000 rubles is the maximum limit you can buy gasoline. 1,000 rubles is like nothing. It's pocket money. So if you buy gasoline at that and you're maximum allowed to get for that, you can only get enough gas to drive away from the gas station and immediately run out again. So these limits basically mean that nobody gets nothing. Now, I found this random thread. Perflacto. I don't know who this guy is, what he does, what's his background, but the way he wrote this is just too good to ignore. I'm gonna read it to you. Sometimes we get experts who just share their opinion in a very good way. I don't know any background, but this text is good. I'll read it to you. Russia's fuel empire is cracking exactly where the research paper said it would. Analysts warned that knocking out 15 to 20% of refining capacity could trigger cascading shortages, and Ukraine's drones have delivered 16 of 38 refineries hit. Throughput down nearly 400,000 barrels per day. Diesel exports at 5-year low. Market tracker like Kpler showed the strikes aren't just hitting crude units, but the hydrocrackers and reformers that actually make gasoline and diesel. So even repaired plants can't meet demand. Carnegie's studies cautioned that rationing and export bans are band-aids when sanctions choke spare parts. And sure enough, Reuters and WAPO confirm up to 40% of capacity idle. With lines at gas stations, 30-liter caps and bans extended into winter, the US has now admitted to sharing intelligence for long-range energy strikes, giving Ukraine the ability to re-hit critical nodes and stretch repair cycles. Exactly the kind of asymmetric leverage academic energy security literature has highlighted for years. Russia is left dumping cheap crude abroad. Exports up 25% in September. Remember, that's the paradox we were looking at in a chart. Exports are up, revenues are down. How is it possible? Well, because crude is cheap nowadays. Refined oil products are expensive. You increase the export of crude, you're still not making as much money as you did when you sold gasoline and diesel. While its citizens push cars to the pump, the scholarly forecasts, market data, and battlefield reality all converge. The war economy is wobbling like a drunk on a tightrope, and the empire built on oil is finally running out of gas. It is a random text in X, but I read it and I loved it. The way it's written, I gotta share it with you. Let's take a look at how Russian car industry is doing. We have AvtoVAZ, the biggest car manufacturer in the Soviet Union and in Russia right now. We all know that about 80 to 90% of Russian new cars sold in Russia are Chinese, but the rest 10 to 50% are still made in Russia, Russian. AvtoVAZ. Lada. We're talking about the new Lada Vesta. News from the Russian car industry. The steering wheel of Lada Vesta locked up at high speed. The airbags failed to deploy and the SOS system was unable to call for help. The car rolled over in a ditch 3 times, leaving the driver with a spinal fracture. This is the first recorded accident since AvtoVAZ admitted to widespread problems of steering wheel lockup while driving. Here's a nice little video for us also. So imagine, yeah, you're going like 100 kilometers per hour driving and you cannot move your steering wheel. This is a nightmare situation for me, honestly. If I imagine, this is scary as hell. And it happens, your wheel just locks up. This is a Lada Vesta, a specific model produced in 2025. It's brand new, and that's what happens. That's the ability Russians have of producing cars. Let's zoom out a little bit in the Russian economy, look at the bigger picture. Everything we just talked about are symptoms, and every countermeasure to that the Russian state does are band-aids on these symptoms, as this beautiful text told us. Now, another symptom of this economic crisis is the issuance of Russian bonds by the government. Basically, the government is taking out loans from its own people, but not the people, but its own banks, actually. You can see it right here. This is the issuance of bonds by the Russian government, basically taking loans supposedly from the people, but we know that it's the Russian banks who are forced to buy these bonds because the bonds are garbage. Nobody wants to buy them. Everybody knows it's garbage. It's war bonds. Every country who issues war bonds, except for the United States, usually fails. Germany issued them in both world wars. Japan issued them. Every losing country has issued massive amounts of them. I'm not talking about the US, that they won. So you can see that 2025, the bond number issued is skyrocketing, up 500% compared to year-on-year average. And people don't want to buy these bonds. They have no interest. They know that this is garbage. So banks don't want to buy them, but banks are forced to buy them. Otherwise, the CEOs of such banks gotta stay away from windows and teas, cup of teas, if you know what I'm talking about. Putin has that ability to persuade these CEOs to buy hundreds of billions of rubles of these bonds. This is how Russia is patching up its budget right now. Now we pivot a little bit, but it's still a symptom. Every different topic I bring here in this segment is a symptom of Russian economy is struggling. Russian soldiers were just issued bandages or med kits, first aid kits from 1977. You can see that. Now these kits were probably used in Afghanistan, Russia's invasion of Afghanistan. Yeah, I mean, if you take them out, if the kit is 50 years old, it's almost half a century old, it crumbles in your hands. Bandages, they don't hold together, they crumble, they're probably infested with mold or some kind of bacteria. They don't save lives, rather they take them. If you put that bandage on an open wound, it will get infected. Really bad. So yeah, it's a symptom of Russians not being able to produce enough first aid kits and not being able to buy enough of them from China. Those two things, it's a symptom of that, which itself is a symptom of a bigger picture. Why would a country not be able to produce band-aids? I mean, they're relatively easy to produce compared to oil refinery parts. It says something about their abilities. Now, my friends, I want to read you one of the best comments in the previous videos. I do that in every video. And I made a mistake in the last video. I said to you that United States Tomahawk missiles are only wielded by 3 countries, United States, Japan and Australia. I made a mistake. I stand corrected. I'll read it to you. Trevor Redman says, Artur, just to let you know, the Royal Navy has been using Tomahawk cruise missiles since 1998 and still does currently, using the Block 5 version. You will see that it has been used in a number of wars since, and we were the one of the first users after the United States. Thanks. Best regards, Trevor. I stand corrected, and I now know that there are many countries who wield them, not only 3. Yeah, thank you for correcting me. But now, my friends, I'll be reading you Buy Me a Coffee monthly members, 3 new joiners. First of all, we have Cordon Hiuma, who never joins as a member. He always does at one time. But thank you, Cordon. You wrote to me and Buy Me a Coffee also. Hiuma being the second biggest island of Estonia. Very much connected to history of Sweden and the Vikings. Gordon wrote to me about that topic in Buy Me a Coffee. Thank you. Then we have Somehona, who wishes to be anonymous. Finally, Cosmic Rai. If you like my channel, then the Buy Me a Coffee link is in the description below. Now we'll pivot to the front lines, my friends. We'll immediately jump into Pokrovsk because we have a report from the front that Russians are still sending in reinforcements, trying to cross this area south of Novotoretsk, to cross through this drone kill zone. I use these words knowingly because, as I said many times, there are no Ukrainian units in these fields in between of the Baikivka encirclement and the main Russian army, if you can call it that. There are Ukrainian drones, however, saturating every meter of this area. So Russians are able to send in reinforcements, and every 20 men they send in, some of them make it to this encirclement. There is a very clear reasons why Ukrainians are not 100% blocking this gap. Well, every man Russians send to this encirclement will die. That's the certainty. Ukrainians know it. These encirclements are dead already. It's a matter of time. But Russians keep sending in troops across this gap. They lose about 80% of whatever they send across these fields to the drones, and the rest who make it are wounded or badly traumatized. They make it to the encirclement. There's no food, no ammunition. There's no water issue right now because it rains a lot. No medical. So it's okay to keep sending men to the kill box, looking from the Ukrainian side. It's okay, let them do that, because these guys will be eliminated by whatever the reason in the future. Now, my friends, let's go to northern Ukraine, the Sumy axis, and I want to show you this another kill box that Ukrainians have set up on the front lines. There is a specific water reservoir right here, hugging the Russian border, a bit east of Konstantinivka. Look at this. Let me draw a little bit. I like drawing. This is a water reservoir right here. It's a natural barrier. Now, there are very minor contingents of Russian troops. Let me use red, sorry. It's gonna be messy. Some Russian troops still occupy positions hugging this water reservoir. Now, as you can see, they are kind of surrounded because behind them is a water reservoir. In front of them, Ukrainians again do what they do best. They're not pushing, they're just holding and bombarding them with drones. Now, what do Russians do to save these guys or to try to push out from here? Now, it would be incredibly stupid to try to cross this water reservoir when Ukrainian drones saturate the air, but that's what they do. We have a video of that, actually. They are sending troops over this water reservoir with rubber boats. The water reservoir, as you can see, it's 100, 150 meters wide. It's not that wide. You could actually swim it without any gear. The issue is Ukrainian drones, and the issue is what they do. You can see it in this video. One boat carries what? A whole squad. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Half a squad. So yeah, it's so bad. It's the Ukrainian 225th Regiment. And they're taking out a unit, half a squad from the 810th Marine Brigade. Who, I don't know, Marine Brigade, it's like semi-elite. They have good training, they have good weapons, but to be sent like that over a water reservoir in a rubber boat to other side, Russians are known to do that. They did the same thing during the Battle of Stalingrad when a small strip of land across the Volga River was held, and they just funneled men through under the Stuka bombardments and German machine guns. It's pretty much the same, only on a lot smaller scale. But they do that. Anyway, both of these boats taken out. The elimination of 43 invaders who were sent across the kill zone has already been confirmed. So yeah, Russians, that's the way they do things. And Ukrainians, knowing that, they set up such kill boxes just for Russians to send troops in. Now, I just let you know two areas, Sumy and Pokrovsk, where Ukrainians are controlling the situation to balance that out and not leave you with one-sided picture. If we go to Kupyansk, Russians are slowly but actively moving into the urbanized areas. I'll just make just a circle so you know what we're talking about. So, Russians are moving in, they're using pipelines and everything they have, and they are taking house by house, street by street, they are advancing. The price is, of course, high in manpower, but I gotta let you know the truth that If Ukraine does not send in stabilization brigades, these are the brigades, for example, third assault and first Azov Corps, these brigades, the best units Ukraine has. If they don't send them here, then Kupyansk will lose a lot of territory in the city. But these brigades, what I just mentioned, they're in Pokrovsk doing miracles there. So Ukraine does not have that many elite brigades. If they could send in, for example, 81st or 47th mechanized, these are very good brigades. But again, they are also deployed elsewhere. So as of now, Ukraine is very slowly trading urbanized area and Kupyansk for the Russian losses. To balance out the picture even more, I gotta show you, let's go to the southern/eastern front. It's in between. It's the Russian offensive towards Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. Let me show you what's going on. So this is the overall area, Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, and Russian movement toward it is moving quite fast. Ukrainians are knowingly slowly retreating here. They don't have, again, elite brigades to send in because they are stabilizing in Pokrovsk with them already. Let me just show you the animation of ground taken by the Russians. Each click is 1 day, and you can see Russians are advancing here. So now I showed you 4 different frontal areas. 2 of them Ukraine is controlling, the kill boxes. 2 of them Russians are advancing slowly. 1 in the urbanized area of Kupyansk and 1 in Dnipropetrovsk towards the oblast. Jumping away from the front lines to Russian missiles, because Russians have surprised us all because they have developed their Iskander and Kinzhal ballistic missiles. Iskander does also cruise, but we're talking about the Iskander M, the ballistic version. They have developed or redeveloped these missiles to avoid Patriot air defense missiles. Patriot air defense missiles, you know, the best in the world, one of the most expensive in the world, with crazy interception percentage. But that percentage have dropped. Check it out. These are ballistic missiles intercepted. The light blue line here represents Ukrainian interception rates. And in September 2025, look, here is where the change happened. In August, Ukraine intercepted about half of every ballistic missile sent. Most drones and most cruise missiles will be intercepted. Ballistic missiles are very difficult to shoot down. But now the percentage is only 6% of every missile sent. So something happened. I don't think it's the Ukrainian capabilities. I think it's the Russians. They, for example, what they changed in the missile flight path, the missiles initially follow a predictable ballistic trajectory, but abruptly change the direction in the terminal pace. The final seconds before impact. They perform maneuvers, briefly dive or deploy decoys, radar decoys, to evade interception attempts. These upgrades make it more difficult for the Patriot system to predict and intercept these exact point of impact because the system's software is based on a calculated trajectory. That's really painful because one Patriot missile is very rare for Ukraine and it costs a lot of money. So if Russians are able to fool them or waste them in any way, unfortunately this one is a specific victory for the Russians. Now, let's jump to occupied Luhansk city in eastern Ukraine. Since, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this, I don't think I have, but both Russians and Ukrainians, both army units and squads, if they ever have a vehicle, whichever vehicle it is, even tanks, they get their gasoline from civilian gas stations. That's what they do. I mean, they're not supposed to, but both armies do that. I think every army does that. And in this specific instance, Russian trucks pulled up in a specific gas station in Oborona Street in Luhansk. Here is the Oborona Street running north to south and diagonally to the southeast. This street right here, there is one specific gas station. They pulled in to get gas. And Ukrainian drones up in the air, recon drones, immediately notified the drone units who sent in FPVs or long-range attack drones, don't matter which ones, fixed-wing ones. And they blew up the military trucks. You can see the burning here. So, gas stations. If there's a gas shortage, right, even Then you turn gas stations into kill zones, but you can choose what you hit. Obviously, you don't want to hit civilians, so you just wait until any Russian vehicles, military vehicles, go to gas stations. They get fuel because their reserves might be dwindling, or they just get it from the civilian gas stations as they do, and you send in drones. So this fuel and gas shortage in Russia still produces new symptoms for us that Ukrainians can use for their advantage. For example, destroying Russian military trucks while they're refueling in civilian gas stations. Ukrainians attacked also a plant, Uralchem Azot plant in Berezhniki, Perm around 1,600 kilometers from the front line, and it's one of the longest range strikes so far. Of course, there are longer ones, it's like top 10. It's among Russia's biggest fertilizer producers, making ammonia, urea, and ammonium nitrate. You can make a lot of explosives with these materials. In 2024, this plant reached a record output of 2.3 million tons. It has been geolocated also by some genius. They do that. It's insane how they do that. Let me show you on Google Maps. This is the building. Let's zoom out just to show which part of Russia we're in, because Russia is so damn vast. I think we need to do that every time something is hit, so you know which part of the world of Russia we're in. See, this is where I am right now. Look at that. Look at me. And look at that. How far is that? 1,600 kilometers. So now we have another genius in X speaking about things I would never know, but since I'm able to just read it and bring that information to you, I'll do it. Truth, PhD, a good name, says striking a nitrogen complex is a double shock. It crips farm inputs and disrupts a feedstock for munitions. Since Haber-Bosch ammonia for natural gas feeds nitric acid and ammonium nitrate lines. If nitric acid units trip, satellites can catch brief NO2 plumes, a telltale verification. As Russia is a major nitrogen exporter, downtime can ripple into grain prices far beyond the blast site. In one of the last videos, I covered Ukrainian strikes on another Russian plant, Elektrodetal plant in Russia's Bryansk region. Now, this plant makes electronic components for Russian ballistic missiles, Iskander-M. Now, the information comes out that Ukraine used 4 long-range R360 Neptune missiles. Now, in this photo, the missile is pink, but it's not flamingo. Well, it's still pink and it's beautiful. 4 of them. Initially, the Neptune's supposed to be anti-ship missiles developed after 2014 in Ukraine. But now, after full-scale invasion, ever since the last 3 years, Ukraine has been using them to hit ground targets in Russia. For example, plants who make electronic parts for Russian ballistic missiles. Keep in mind the color of the flames while the plant is burning. Comes in important because, again, we have a very good commentator. I will read these comments if they contribute something good. Name is Mekun Vijici. The bright red and orange flames means that the plant is destroyed very thoroughly. It means that plastic, resins used to coat wires and connectors are burning. Hydrocarbons burning in an enclosed space with limited oxygen produce flames that color, meaning production areas were hit. Thank you for this great input. The flames indeed are bright red. Neptune missiles have done their job good. Now, to balance out the picture for the name or sake of the truth, Russians themselves released a video of striking a Ukrainian electrical infrastructure of Chernobyl. I kid you not. They targeted the Slavutitsk electrical substation that powered protection from radiation at the Chernobyl nuclear reactor. The Ukrainian military said they will conduct reciprocal strikes going forward. We have a video of this also, but this substation is responsible for controlling the systems that keep the radiation under control, keep the reactors cooled. Some of the reactors are still working in Chernobyl. Not the 4th one though. And you can see the Russians used many drones to do this, many ones. They would really want this destroyed. It comes in a serious time because now the United States is considering sending Neptunes and Trump has given the order to share intelligence with the Ukrainians again. So Putin every time is in a corner, he brings out the nuclear saber rattling, striking areas near the nuclear power stations. For example, Zaporozhye nuclear power station, they do some shenanigans there, or they hit some electronical substation in Chernobyl, or they say that we have the Uralchem capable of carrying nuclear weapons. Well, they bring out the nuclear topic again. Every time this happens, they know they're backed in a corner. This is how they read the Russian behavior. And I will end the Frontline segment and today's video with mines. This specific one is a Russian mine disguised as a block of wood. I gotta say, for the sake of the truth, both sides are doing it exactly the same. They're disguising their mines and they're mining huge areas with butterfly mines. But this specific one is a Russian one as a block of wood. Let's look inside of it. Look at that. It's quite easy to make something like that. Now, I'm quite sure that this is forbidden under the Geneva Convention, but again, I cannot hide the truth from you. Both sides are doing it as much as possible, everywhere as possible. The rules and the gloves are off in this war. But yeah, these are basically IEDs. I mean, I know many Americans are watching me and veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan. You guys have contact with these IEDs from Taliban or Al-Qaeda. Well, this is a Russian IED, and this is a Russian butterfly mine. They blow these out by the thousands with artillery, when they spread out. Ukrainians do it also. I cannot not say this. I have to. Both sides do this. My friends, thank you for watching. I'll be back for you on Monday, so be sure to subscribe in the meantime to be notified when I upload. I'll be bringing you again Russian economy, Russian front lines, international news segment as I do in every video. Until then, my friends, Slava Ukraini, and bye-bye.